Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day. My name is Vince and thank you for joining me for another episode of Secrets of the Trails. Today we're in Frostburg, Maryland, ready to check out the Great Allegheny Passage segment from Frostburg to Deal. I'm standing at the trailside trailhead that the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy uses for official mileage for the trail. The trailside trailhead officially sits at gap mile 15.5. Now, if you've seen my post on secretsofthetrails.com, you've probably figured out that I pretty much beat the uniqueness of this trailhead to death and probably ticked off the bigwigs at alltrails.com too. Sorry guys, but I am right. So briefly here, I'll review the fact that right here is technically the trailhead parking area. All of the amenities are here. Covered seating area, bike repair station, water fountain, porta potty, and plenty of parking. In fact, by best calculations, the trailside parking area can accommodate a total of 22 vehicles at least, including handicapped, with the parking areas laid out in a back-to-back formation, with the two handicapped spaces separated from the larger parking area and placed literally next to the trail. Up there is a half-mile switchback that goes up to what alltrails.com considers the starting point for some of their curated trail maps for this segment and for the Cumberland to Frostburg segment that we discussed last time. There are some good amenities on top of the switchback, including the Thrasher Carriage Museum, the Frostburg Depot for the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, the Trail Inn that features a food truck type of snack and ice cream bar, and Tracks and Yaks. Oh, and I definitely recommend braving the switchback for Miners Park, a recently installed exhibit dedicated to honoring the sacrifices and the huge role that coal mining and coal miners have played and still play in American history and culture. Here at Trailside, there are no e-bike charging stations yet, but I have spied some outlets up at Tracks and Yaks and the Trail Inn. So if you need a top up and you ask really nicely, they may offer you some juice. Given that the Gap Conservancy has arranged charging ports at Canal Place in Cumberland and downtown Meyersdale, it wouldn't surprise me if we see this option popping up soon at other major trailheads such as Frostburg. So before we mount up and check out this trail segment, let's take a brief look at the history of this trailhead town, Frostburg. Situated about 8 miles due west of Cumberland, the city of Frostburg was founded in the early 19th century as a small settlement known as Mount Pleasant. Its growth was closely tied to the region's coal mining industry. The discovery of coal deposits in the surrounding mountains spurred economic development and attracted settlers to the area. The town's name was changed to Frostburg in 1820 in honor of Meshaw Frost, a prominent landowner and businessman. Frostburg quickly became a center for coal mining and related industries such as coke production and glass manufacturing. The expansion of the railroads into the region in the mid-19th century further fueled Frostburg's growth, providing a crucial transportation link for moving coal and other goods to markets in the east. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, Frostburg thrived as a bustling industrial town, with coal mining serving as the primary economic engine. By the mid-20th century, however, Frostburg, like many coal towns in Appalachia, began to decline as changes in the energy industry and advancements in technology led to a shift away from coal. Despite these challenges, Frostburg has worked to preserve its rich history and heritage. Today, the town is known for its charming downtown area, historic architecture, and cultural attractions. Frostburg State University, founded in 1898 as a teacher's college, is a prominent institution in the town, contributing to its cultural and educational vibrancy. Frostburg also benefits from its location amid the scenic beauty of the Appalachian Mountains. As a major trailhead for the Great Allegheny Passage, Frostburg continues to attract outdoor enthusiasts who come to bike, hike, and explore the nearby trails and recreational areas, and often partake of Frostburg's off-trail amenities. While Frostburg's industrial heyday may be in the past, the town remains a resilient community with a proud heritage and a bright future. Hope you enjoyed that brief look at the history of the city of Frostburg. Now let's mount up and ride the Frostburg to Deal segment of the Great Allegheny Passage. So starting at the trailside trailhead to the Deal trailhead, this segment measures 9.2 miles point to point. The treadway surface is mostly crushed limestone, with a few exceptions that we'll see along the way. The width is an average 10 feet, but there are a significant portion of the trail north of the crossover with Mount Savage Road Northwest, where the treadway almost doubles its standard width. The first feature that we'll encounter here is this hill that has a much steeper upslope than the rest of this segment. The upslope appears to be about 2.5% or so. Now, if you're a surveyor, I'd love it if you can come out and measure this and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Fortunately, this steeper upslope doesn't really last very long because we're about to crest it right now. And once we do crest it, it passes over Mount Savage Road Northwest. And we're crossing over Mount Savage Road Northwest right here. And for the next several miles, it's a total uphill. At this point, the trail maintains an uninterrupted, estimated average 1.5% upslope all the way up to the Big Savage Tunnel. Shortly after we pass mile 16, I mentioned that the trail treadway width widens for a few miles, and you can see what I'm talking about. This additional width on the right side or eastern side of the trail appears much less groomed in various areas, and it's depressed in a lot of areas. So if you're on the main part of the trail and you have to go all the way down here, you'll notice a lot of ruts, a lot of washout that isn't necessarily groomed as part of the trail itself. So I'd say be careful if you have to use that edge for any reason, which hopefully you should never have to do. I really haven't come across why that's there, but my guess is probably for maintenance vehicles. And if anybody knows exactly why, leave me a message in the comments below. It's a beautiful day for a pack ride, and you just saw a lot of bikes going past in a nice pack line. Yeah, seeing the berm here and grass in between the actual trail itself and this, I'm gonna call it a maintenance road, because I think that's got to be what it's for. I'm just about hit the 2-mile mark on this segment anyway, and we're coming up to the Borden Tunnel. The Borden Tunnel is a 957-foot long former railroad tunnel which, like the Brush Tunnel earlier on the trail, was constructed in 1911 as part of the Western Maryland Railway's expansion into Connellsville, Pennsylvania. It was repurposed as part of the Great Allegheny Passage construction and includes a wide paved treadway with paving stones at either end of the tunnel. It also has motion detection lighting that was installed a few years ago. I'd like to give everybody a word of caution, however, when going through this tunnel. The motion detection system is delayed, and often the lights turn on when you're just about past each light. So it's a good idea to just make sure you have a bright headlight on your bike. North of the Borden Tunnel, the trail returns to its crushed limestone with its less groomed and more depressed right edge for another few miles up to the Mason-Dixon line. Again, a little call out and a warning about this right hand side here that just got to be careful because of all of the washout that is on that side. Loose stones, large stones as a matter of fact, and some people actually coming down may just assume that you're going to go all the way over there, which you know what, honestly, I don't think anybody would want to ride on that unless you've got like an actual car or an ATV. So I guess a shout out to all of the bikers who use this segment of the trail coming down. Maintain a single file for people who don't want to go into that mess that's on the right hand side there. This segment of the trail, it actually goes back to a normal treadway width once we get into Pennsylvania. but this Maryland section, for pretty much the vast majority of this segment up to the Mason-Dixon line, has that extended width over there, which I don't think is actually safe for bicycle use. So unless you've got like really heavy duty mountain bike tires, I would just avoid that little section altogether. Stay in the middle like I'm doing here, which technically is the right side of the actual trail. Coming up to about mile 19 and a half. And any locals who can tell me what this carried before, it looks like it's sides for an old bridge, but I'm not really sure what it was carrying. Anybody who knows, let us know in the comments below. Mile 20, and we're just about to the Mason-Dixon line. So we have come to mile 20 and a half and the Mason-Dixon line. Now, if you know anything about our country's history, you'll know that history books are full of information about the Mason-Dixon line and its significance, not only to the states which borders it defines, but also to U.S. history. So you'll appreciate the fact that I'm not going to go into detail here. I did a bit more detail on the website, but even that doesn't scratch the surface, so I'll leave that to the history buffs. But here at the Mason-Dixon line's intersection with the Great Allegheny Passage, I think some of the best of the heritage of the Mason-Dixon line is celebrated, with landmark replicas and interpretive signage, where the Gap Trail intersects this famous line. There's a replica of the surveyor's 66-foot measuring chains across the trail surface, interpretive signs, a set of engraved granite blocks spelling out the names Mason and Dixon, and an obelisk honoring the Penn and Calvert families, whose antagonistic boundary dispute precipitated Mason and Dixon's survey work. All of these are perfect for your photo op, and a lot of people use it. Okay, you talked me into it. So back on the trail, the rest of the Great Allegheny Passage is here in Pennsylvania. You'll see coming up, the Somerset County portions of the Great Allegheny Passage are primarily managed by the Somerset County Recreation and Trails Association. And they do a good job of sponsoring the maintenance along the sections of the gap that lie within the county. So occasionally you'll see the SCRTA signage along the portions of the trail that lie within Somerset County. So a big shout out to the SCRTA for all they do. Thanks guys, you guys are great. Peeking through, you see a couple of windmills up there at mile 21 here. And we're coming up close to the Big Savage Tunnel and the Big Savage Vista. Don't know what that is, but doesn't it kind of look like one of those Moto X ramps that they like to play with? But right here at the Big Savage Vista, they've actually turned this into a huge rest area with porta potties, permanent porta potties, bike repair station, covered seating areas, bike racks, and a vista to die for. And this is the Big Savage Vista. This is probably one of the most stopped at places here along the Great Allegheny Passage, and pretty much everybody stops here either to just take a little bit of a break at the rest stations that we just passed, or to just sit here and admire the view. This offers a fantastic view of Pennsylvania and Maryland. Now, the gaptrail.org website claims that you can see 4 states from this vantage point, but with West Virginia just south of Frostburg and the northernmost part of Virginia, like about 30 miles, kind of that direction, I know, I guess you really have to know what you're looking for to be able to see 4 states at once. But interestingly, as high as it feels that we are here at the Vista, we're only about 2,300 feet or so above sea level, and there's a bit more to go. Now, just past the Big Savage Vista, we come to the Big Savage Tunnel. There's an interpretive sign that we'll put up here, but it's on the opposite side of the tunnel. Now, depending on who you want to believe, this measures either 3,291 or 3,295 feet long, but I really don't think that matters all that much. But along with other tunnels on this portion of the gap, it was completed in the early 1900s for the Western Maryland Railway's expansion. The tunnel was restored by the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy after it acquired the property in the 1990s. So it is lighted, but you still want to have some reflectors and a headlight with you. Nice thing about this tunnel, and especially in the summer, it's a good 20 degrees cooler inside here than it is outside. As we're getting to the other end of the tunnel, just want to mention also, obviously, it's a tunnel. Your GPS will not work here if you're using a trail app, so make sure you've downloaded your map. The tunnel remains open from April through November, conditions permitting. It is closed during the winter months to protect its inner concrete liner from damage and trail users from any falling debris. There are no alternative routes to use from one end to the other by bicycle or by foot during the winter. So if you're intending to use this trail between November and April, I strongly recommend checking out the gaptrail.org website, where they post updates as to when the tunnel opens and closes. So now we're on the western side of the Big Savage Tunnel, and there's where the interpretive sign is that I put up earlier. One thing to note about the western side of the Big Savage Tunnel, once you get from here and pretty much actually to Myersdale, almost to Myersdale, you will tend to, more often than not, get this persistent, not necessarily strong wind, but a persistent wind coming from the west. It's not that hard that it's hard to pedal against, but it's almost always there. Right around mile 23, the trail zigzags a little bit past a private driveway. And you're going to start to notice as we go through this segment, the trail barriers. You will actually see a lot of central trail barriers on this segment of the trail. That Maryland pretty much took them out for the most part, but a lot of the segments in Pennsylvania actually do have that central trail barrier in place. So remember when I said that there was a bit more to go with elevation on the Great Allegheny Passage? Well, here it is. The Eastern Continental Divide at 2,392 feet above sea level is literally the highest point along the entire Great Allegheny Passage. To coin a phrase, either way you travel on the gap, it's all downhill from here. The Eastern Continental Divide is a hydrographic divide that separates the Chesapeake Bay and Mississippi River / Gulf of Mexico watersheds. It runs from just south of western New York State all the way through Florida. The trail along the divide is paved, and it runs through an underpass below Mackenzie Hollow Road, which can be used to access the Deal Trailhead from Frostburg and points south. The built-up underpass walls are lined with these murals depicting the Western Maryland Railway on the eastern side and the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad on the other side. If you're traveling with a group, don't pass this literal high point by. Take a pic with your feet straddling this yellow line painted across the trail that marks the divide. And coming downhill from the Eastern Continental Divide, another mile or so, till we hit the Deal trailhead. And here about mile 24.6, we've reached the Deal trailhead. So here at gap mile 24.6, we've reached the Deal trailhead, a rural trailhead that doesn't seem to get the justice that I think it deserves, but that's for the next episode. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this Great Allegheny Passage segment from Frostburg to Deal. This is a beautiful ride, perfect for the rider who wants an uphill challenge, but easy enough for the rider who may not want a big challenge. The two tunnels along this segment are really cool to ride through, and in the case of the Big Savage Tunnel, really cool. And the view from the top is totally breathtaking. Plus, this segment features the highest point on the Great Allegheny Passage with the crossing of the Eastern Continental Divide. All in all, it may be a short ride, but it's packed with coolness. But for now, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you next time for another episode of Secrets of the Trails. Have a great ride.